Hilchos Ishus Perek Arba Asar, the laws of marriage, chapter 14. We're learning now the biblical obligations that a husband has to his wife, as it says in the verse on the screen, which we've seen the last few days. She'era ksusa v'einasa lo yigra. A man may not reduce his wife's food, clothing, or conjugal relations. Chapter 12 was all about food. Chapter 13 was all about clothing, which means a lot more than clothing, household items, a home, jewelry, etc. And today we focus on the third of those biblical obligations, the idea of ona, of the fact that there is a certain amount of times that a person must provide for his wife physical intimacy. Also, at the end of the chapter, we're going to segue into the rabbinic obligations that a husband has to his wife: medical care, releasing her from captivity, and burying her upon her death. And so, without further ado, here we go. Says the Rambam, Oina ha'amura b'Torah, the relations that's described in the Torah, the fact that a Jew has an obligation to his wife to provide physical intimacy, l'chol ish ve'ish kifi koichai u'kifi malachtai, is not a universal parameter. There's no generic definition for it. Rather, it goes for every single person according to his strength and according to his job. The job that you do will indicate how much time you have to spend with your wife. Ketzad, what does this look like? The Rambam gives us 6 categories of people. Bnei Adam habriyim v'harakim v'ha'anugim. Healthy people, indulged people, pampered people. We call them spoiled people, couch potatoes. She'ein lahem malacha shemachshelas koichan. They have no job that makes them weak. Elo eichlin v'shoisim v'yeshvin b'vatei, and they simply eat and drink and stay at home all day. Oinasan b'chol laila. Their time to be with their wife is actually every night. Hapayalin, regular workers, like tailors and weavers and builders. And people like them, they're all in one category, even though builders seem to do much more manual and heavy work, but the Rambam puts them with tailors and weavers as well. This kind of classic worker, if they work locally, their job is in their city, their time to be with their wife is twice a week. If they worked in a different city, they came home less frequently, the time to be with their wives was once a week. So you can see here, the first category is the couch potato every day. Second category is the builder, the classic worker, once or twice a week, depending on where he works. Moving on to longer jobs that require a husband to spend more time away from home. Hachamarim, donkey drivers, pam achas b'Shabbos, their time is only once a week. V'hagamolim, camel drivers, achas l'shloshim yoim, once every 30 days, only once a month. V'hamalachim, sailors who go on even further sea journeys, achas l'shisha chadashim, only once in 6 months, comes out to twice a year. Talmidei Chachamim, the 6th category of people, are the Torah sages. Torah sages are nasan pam achas b'Shabbos. Their time is only once a week, because the Torah learning which they're engaged in weakens them. They're obviously studying pretty hard, because my Torah study doesn't weaken me necessarily, but apparently when you study Torah in the most real way, it actually weakens you physically, and therefore their obligation was only to be with their wives once a week. This once a week, it was the practice of Talmidei Chachamim, Torah sages, to reserve that for Friday night. Rambam himself actually wrote in the beginning of the 3rd book, the laws of Shabbat, that part of Oneg Shabbos, part of the pleasure of Shabbos, is to be with one's wife. And so it seems like this is the reason why they would reserve that once a week, anyways, to combine it with another mitzvah of Oneg Shabbos. So these are the 6 categories of people: every day, twice a week, once a month, twice a year, and specifically Friday night for the Torah sages. It says the Rambam Halacha Beis, Yesh le'isha la'akiv al baila, the woman has the right to withhold her husband, to only conduct business in areas that are close, so he comes home more often and can be with her more often. And that way, he won't hold back from her proper time. And indeed, he could only make these journeys with her permission. She also has the right to stop him, to change jobs. If he's now in a job that gets him to be closer to home, and he wants to move to a job that's going to make him further from home, she can stop him from doing that. If a donkey driver wants to become a camel driver, her time is going to go from once a week to once a month. She may not want that. Or a camel driver wants to become a sailor, moving from once a month to only twice a year, and therefore she has to approve. And if she wants to stop him, she can. The Talmidei Chachamim, only the 6th category, the Torah sages, they can go out to learn Torah without the permission of their wives for 2-3 years. Not more than that. Rabbi Akiva, who famously left his wife for 12 years, did so, of course, with her explicit permission. But for the first 2-3 years, no permission is required. Similarly, if there's a couch potato who wants to change his occupation to Torah study, his wife cannot stop him, even though technically this goes into the category of losing more time. Instead of having every day, she's going to only have him once a week. Nevertheless, because he wants to go learn Torah, Torah trumps that, and she cannot stop him. Says the Rambam Halacha Gimel, an interesting law. We know today we're only allowed to marry one wife, but in times of old it was possible to marry multiple wives. How do you take care of ona, conjugal rights, in the context of a marriage with more than one wife? Says the Rambam, Adam kama nashim afilu meya. First of all, the very fact is that a person can marry many wives, even 100, bein bevasachas, bein bezu acharzu, whether all together or one after another. Ve'ein ishta yechel la'akev, and his current wife cannot stop him, even though, as we're going to see in a minute, it's going to necessitate less time with her. V'hu, provided sheyeyachol litin she'er ksus v'oina. He must be able to provide food, clothing, and the conjugal rights as is befitting for every single one. If he's a man of financial means, he can do that, no problem. He cannot force them to all live in one quarters. Each one needs to have her own quarters. But as long as he can provide that, he can enter into a marriage with multiple women. There's even now, Guinness Book of World Records, you can see some Thai man has 39 wives and 100 kids. And he has them all in this little apartment complex. He literally built 3-floor bunch of apartments, and each one lives in a different unit. And that's okay if you can provide for that. Now, food and clothing, it's pretty understood how you provide for that. What does it actually look like to provide conjugal rights to each of these women? The Kamo Hi Einasan says the Rambam, how much is the time? Lefi minyan, proportional to the number of wives that he has. In other words, according to the category of the job that he works, that's how many times he will have to provide conjugal relations. It doesn't mean that each woman will get that amount of time with him. It simply means he will be spending that much time with one of his wives. Ketzah, what does that look like? A worker, classic worker. His time is twice a week, and he has 2 wives. Each woman will get once a week. He has to provide twice a week to his wives, but it will end up, proportionally split up, that each wife will end up only with once a week. If he had 4 wives, so it'll turn out that each one gets to be with him only once every 2 weeks. Because again, he's providing twice a week, but he has 4 women. Over 2 weeks, he gets to each one once. Same thing if he was a sailor and he had 4 wives, it'll turn out that each one will get to be with him only once in 2 years, because his obligation is twice a year. He has 4 women, he only gets to each one once every 2 years. Therefore, taking all this into account, the sages commanded as follows: no man should ever marry more than 4 wives, because standardly, people go either into this category or this one, where they're with their wives once a week. And if you have 4 wives, that'll turn out that you're going to get to them once a month. And we don't want a husband to be with his wife less than once a month. Even if he has tons of money, only marry a maximum of 4, so that the time that the husband will be with them will be at least once a month. This week's parsha, last week's parsha, Yaakov married 4 wives. He kept to that maximum. Halacha hey, hamadiras ishtoi. If a person makes a vow that forces his wife, shetoimar la'achedim, that she tell over to other people, masha amar la, oy masha amra loi, the conversation that he had with her or that she had with him, midivrei schoik v'kalos roish, shemedaber adam im ishtei al iske tashmish. Those conversations of lightheadedness and jokingness that a person has with his wife in regards to marital relations. Those are, of course, very private conversations and very personal. A person makes a vow, he forces his wife to tell over those conversations. That's unacceptable. He must divorce her and actually give her the ksuba money along with that. This woman cannot be forced to act brazenly and tell over embarrassing things to other people. Similarly, if the husband makes a vow, forcing his wife to act out during relations in a way that she will not become pregnant, a primitive version of birth control before the pills. She would act with her body in certain ways that would not allow the pregnancy to take place, and the husband makes the wife take such a vow, or he makes a vow forcing her to do foolish things that have no substance. They look completely ridiculous. The commentaries and the Talmud gives the example of telling your wife to fill up a pitcher of water and pour it down the drain. In all of these cases, the husband is making unacceptable vows. He must divorce his wife and provide her with the ksuba money on her way out. Halacha vav. If a husband makes a vow depriving his wife from marital relations, Shabbos achas mamtinin, we give him a week to retract. Yasser al kain yaitzivi in ksuba yafer nidre. More than that, either he divorces her and gives her the ksuba, or he annuls his vow. Afilu haya malach shayinase l'shisha chadashim. Even if he's a sailor, where anyway his time with his wife is not for another 6 months. So what do we care if they wait a week in a state of no relations? Doesn't matter. Shekevan shenadar hareitziar v'nisyasha. The moment he verbally expressed the vow, that's when he causes her pain and she despairs of ever having a future intimacy. So even if he only says right now, and anyway it's not coming for another 6 months, we only wait a week, and after a week, either annul the vow or annul the marriage. The Ketzad Madira. Now, in order for such a vow to even go into effect, it has to be expressed in the right way. Because we remember the concept of masnal mashakosov b'Torah, the idea of expressing a stipulation against that which the Torah says. When you do such a thing, the whole condition is invalid. It's not even a valid condition which we cancel. The whole thing is canceled to begin with. Same thing with a vow. If you make a vow against your obligation in the Torah, the whole vow doesn't go into effect. So what exactly did the husband say over here? Im amar la tashmishi asur alayich. If he said to her, your relations is forbidden unto me, or he took an oath that he will never engage in relations, the whole vow is canceled. It's not a vow. If he took an oath, it's an oath in vain. Because he is subservient to her in this matter. He owes her, biblically, this relations. The only way he can formulate a vow in which it would go into effect, and then the above law would apply, that we wait for a week and then force him out of the marriage, would be if he said, Amar la, hanas tashmishech asura alai. The pleasure which I derive from relations with you, that's what's becoming prohibited unto me. That's a biblically or halachically legal way to formulate such a vow. It indeed is a vow. He's forbidden to have relations. Because we don't force a person to eat that which is forbidden to him. We don't force him to derive the pleasure which he simply prohibited unto himself. And because that vow goes into effect, now the week of wait goes into effect, and after a week he's got to annul the vow or annul the marriage. Says the Rambam Malacha Zayin, within the context of a marriage. It's forbidden for a man to withhold his wife from her conjugal time. If he transgressed and purposely withheld it just to pain her, he transgresses the above mentioned biblical negative commandment. As it says, you're not allowed to reduce the food, clothing, or conjugal relations. But if he's not giving relations for an outside reason, either because he's sick or because his strength has weakened, the really isn't able to do the act of relations, yamtin shisha chadashim shema yavri. We wait 6 months, perhaps in 6 months you'll heal. Because there is no greater time of relations than 6 months. Even a sailor comes home once in 6 months, so we wait those 6 months. Maybe he'll heal in those 6 months. And then afterwards, if he's still not better, at that point, either you got to get permission to stay in this situation, or you force the marriage to end, divorce her, and give her the ksuba. The commentaries today talk about, since today we have modern medicine and we can actually predict how long it'll take to heal certain ailments, what if there's a husband who has a condition that we know it will be over in 8 months? So it's more than the 6 months here, but it's with definitiveness. See, the Rambam says you wait 6 months, shema, maybe he'll heal. What if you know for sure that he'll heal in 8 months? So the commentaries say that's a case where we do have to wait for that. The woman must stay in the marriage because it's going to heal, and then he'll go back to being himself. Halacha ches. What about on the flip side? If a woman withholds relations from her husband, she is called a rebel, a rebellious woman. And before we take any further steps, we have to inquire and figure out why is it that she's rebelling. What's the motivation behind this withholding? If she says, it's purely technical. I loathe him. I can no longer allow myself with my consent to have relations with him. We do force the man to divorce her at that moment. She isn't the captive woman that she has to engage in relations with somebody who she hates. However, because she initiated the divorce, she will exit the marriage with no ksuba money. She can take whatever remains of the property that she brought into the marriage. Whether it's the type of property which she brought in and the husband took ownership and responsibility of. Whether the property is known as miloig properties in which the husband does not take responsibility and it remains in the wife's possession. This is going to be explored in further detail in chapter 16. The bottom line is there's two types of property a woman can bring into a marriage. One, where she transfers the rights to the husband of the real estate itself. Any profits accrue to the husband, any losses accrue to the husband, and in case of divorce, the husband has to reimburse the woman at the basic value of that real estate when it came into the marriage, whether he gained or lost. Those are called nichsei tzon barzel, iron sheep, because they're at a fixed rate. The other type of property is called nichsei meloig, which is a case where the woman brings in real estate, she retains the right to the real estate, the husband only uses the proceeds. And therefore any benefits or losses accrue to the woman. Here the Rambam is saying, whatever property she brought into the marriage, she can only take whatever remains of them. The husband isn't required to reimburse on whatever level he is supposed to reimburse. Because again, she instigated the divorce. Neither does she take anything that belongs to the husband. Even the shoe on her feet, the cap on her head, which the husband bought for her, she must take that off and give it back to him. Any gifts that he gave her, she has to return. Because of course the husband never gave her the gifts with the understanding that she's going to take it and go. The ideal was you stay in the marriage. She's leaving the marriage, the gifts go back. That's all if the rebellion is being done simply out of technical motivation. I don't like him anymore. By the way, the commentaries say you have to make sure that she's not saying that because she's in love with another man. She has to be just in relationship to him, done with him. But what if she's rebelling from her husband, withholding relations simply to pain him? She's weaponizing that ability to cause him stress. The Amran, she says, I'm paining him with this, because he did something else to me, I'm repaying him with this. Maybe he cursed me, he made a fight with me, and anything like that. That's not allowed. Weaponizing relations simply in the context of revenge, we don't accept that. And the court sends her a message and they tell her, you should know, if you're going to stay in your rebellious state, even if your ksuba promise is 100 mana, which is 10,000 silver coins, you're going to lose it. After the initial warning to the woman, we make public announcements about her in the shuls and in the study halls every day, 4 weeks in a row. And we say every day, Plainis Marda al Baila, so and so the woman has rebelled against her husband. After the announcement of 4 weeks, we send her a second message from the court. And we tell her, final warning, if you stay in your rebellious state, you are about to lose your ksuba money. If she stood fast to her rebellious and did not retract, we actually consult her in person to let her know that the loss is going into effect. She loses her ksuba payment, and no ksuba is granted to her at all. The redundant expression here is explained by the commentaries as a reference to the ikar and the tosefet, the mainstay, the 200 or 100 coins that every woman is promised, plus the additional money that this husband may have committed to her. She loses everything. However, the actual divorce is not delivered till 12 months. We give them a year to reconcile. Perhaps they can reconcile. The husband has no financial obligations to her during those 12 months, no need to provide for food, but they stay in the marriage. If the woman dies during this time, the husband still gets to inherit her. They're still married. But we're already beginning to punish her in the sense that she has no ksuba left. Yud Aleph, Kaseder Hazeh, Oisin Loi Morda Kedil Tzare. This is the order of procedure which is followed if she's doing the rebellion simply to pain him. Da'afilu Haisanida Eichayla, kind of like the guy, even if the conditions don't even allow for relations, even if she was a menstruating woman or she was sick, She'eina Re'uya L'tashmish, where she isn't even fit to have relations. Da'afilu Hayabayla Malach She'inase L'shisha Chadashim, where maybe her husband was a sailor. Anyway, he's only coming home once in 6 months. Even if he has another woman, he can be provided for over there. Who cares if this woman doesn't want to give him relations? He'll get his needs met somewhere else. Doesn't matter. If she's doing it with the express intent of revenge and just to pain him, she becomes a moredes, and we follow the procedure. Yud Beis, the truth is, not only in the context of marriage, even if a woman was engaged, betrothed, the husband gave her a ring, they set the wedding date for 3 months from today, and in 3 months, she doesn't want to get married, Umarda kedei letzarei v'lei nisas, she rebelled just to pain him and does not get married. Harezu mairedas mitashmis, she is considered to have the halachic definition of a woman who rebels from relations. V'chein yevama, shalei ratzas lihisyabem kedei letzarei, a woman in the wings of Yibum. Her husband passed away childless, she's supposed to marry her brother-in-law. And instead of going ahead with the marriage, she says, no, just to pain you, I'm not going in. We follow this procedure with her as well. She's also classified as a moredes, as a rebellious woman. Says the Rambam, ha-moredes hazais, this rebellious woman, when she leaves in the end, after 12 months, if she stands fast and the get goes into effect, she must also return anything that belongs to the husband, like the other case of the woman who rebels simply out of loathing. Aval, but there is one difference between them when it comes to the properties. In the case of the woman who goes out for loathing, she takes whatever she brought into the marriage as it is, even though no reimbursement is made, but whatever remains she can take. In this case, because she rebelled to pain the husband has a chance to actually grab hold of the properties and keep them for himself. Aval says that any property which she brought into the marriage and the remains are there, im tafsa ein maitzin miyada. If she grabs possession of them, indeed we do not take it away from her. V'im tafsan habal ein maitzin miyada. But if the husband grabs hold of them, they're rightfully his, and we don't take them out of his hands. V'chein kol ma she'avad min nechaseha shekibel habal achrayusan alav. Any losses that accrue to her properties, even those on which the husband had given a guarantee, he doesn't pay her back anything. Zehu din ha-gemara b'mayredas, the foregoing, all the above, is the Talmudic ruling on a woman who rebels against her husband. Says the Rambam, v'amru ha-go'enim. After the Talmudic era, some Geonim came, and they said, sheyesh lahem bebavel min hagas acheres b'mayredas. They follow other customs in Babylonia when it comes to the rebellious woman. As the commentaries explain, these customs are much more in favor of the woman. The Rambam's version goes in favor of the man, as you can clearly tell. They were more in the interests of the woman, and the Rambam disagrees with them. He says, "V'loi pashtu oisan haminhagas b'rev Yisrael." Those customs never became widespread amongst the majority of Jews. V'rabim ugdolim chelken aleim b'rev hamekaymis. Many Jews, great Jews, argue on them in most places. Kedina gemara roi litfos v'ladun. It's fitting to grab hold and to judge like the law of the Talmud that I just delineated, says the Rambam. Halacha tesvav. Back to a case where the man does the withholding. Hamoyred al ishtei v'amar. A person rebels against his wife and says, I'll feed her, I'll support her, but I will not have relations with her, I hate her. As a fine, we increase the rate of her ksuba by 36 barley corns of silver every week. He can sit there, not have relations, so long as she wants to suffer through it. And the fine, the ksuba money, will keep on going up. And the Rambam says, don't think you're off the hook because of that. Just because you're paying the fine and the ksuba money is going up, he is still transgressing at every moment the biblical negative commandment. It says, no reducing. You may not reduce your wife's relations. He's reducing it. He's paying a fine, but he's also transgressing the Torah. You hate the wife, send her away. But to keep her trapped and in pain, that's forbidden. Why don't we go even further and give him lashes for transgressing? Because there's no action. It's a very big rule in Torah law. You can only get lashes for transgressing a prohibition if the way you transgressed was by an active act. If all you did was something passive, we can't punish you. So for example, eating non-kosher, you ate something, you can be lashed for that. In this case, not engaging in relations, all you're doing is being passive. We can't give you a punishment for being passive. Says the Rambam, what do you do if it's the man's word against the woman? If a man and his wife come to court, the husband says, she's rebelling from relations, she doesn't give me relations. She says, not so. I am with him like the way of the world. Or it was the other way. She is claiming and saying that he's rebelling from relations. And he says, not so. I'm with her like the way of the world. So first thing the court does is machrimin betchila. We declare a ban of excommunication al mishu merid v'lo bebezdin, on anybody here in this room who is actually rebelling and isn't agreeing. Remember, we had this concept before. When we're not sure who's right and all we have is one word against the other, the court, as a deterrent, can first impose a ban of excommunication. Nobody wants to be excommunicated. So when they hear that, they might admit to the truth. That's the first thing we do. After that, if nobody admits, we tell the husband and wife, here, you're with us here, go into seclusion, go into a room and do your thing, as witnesses watch. If they went into a room, and they still come out claiming, didn't happen. One of them is saying the other one didn't want to give into their relations. So what we do is, mivakshin min anitan, we're kind of stuck. We just ask the guy the claim is being made against, or the woman who the claim is being made against, we try to get a compromise, as the judge has the power to do. We can never finally solve the case. We cannot force them to have relations in front of any person. It's forbidden to have relations as anybody watches. So all we can tell them is go into seclusion. But we can't actually watch them solve the crisis. And therefore, we're left with the ability to just make a compromise to the best of our ability. And that closes the laws related to relations. Now we move on to the next category, rabbinic obligations of the husband, beginning with medical care. Ha'isha shecholsa, says the Rambam, if a woman becomes sick, the husband is obligated to heal her until she becomes fully healthy, pay for all the medical bills. What if the husband sees it's going to be a long haul? It's a big sickness. He stands to lose a lot of money if he pays all the bills. The Amar La, so bit of a cruel move, but he tells her, here's the money I committed to you in your ksuba. Either use this money to heal yourself, to pay for your own medical bills, or I'll divorce you, and anyway, that's all you'll have. I'll give you a ksuba and leave. Unfortunately, we do listen to the husband. It's a valid claim. It's not proper to do that. It's not ethical. It's not the way of the world, but if you did it, dryly halachically, we can't hold you accountable. What if the woman is too sick to take care of herself? Then the commentaries say that that's unacceptable. The husband must stay in the marriage and take care of his wife. That's as far as the obligation to heal. Now the obligation to ransom her, to release her from captivity. Nishbeis chayav livdoisa. If a woman goes into captivity, the husband has to redeem her. V'im haya kohen. If he was a kohen, shekvar nesra alav, in which case there's a tragic result here, because a kohen, once his wife is with a Gentile, even if it's by rape, he cannot be with her no longer. So we learned before that once a woman is taken into captivity, the assumption has to be made that Gentiles had relations with her. So you would think, what's the Kohen redeeming her for? He anyway cannot stay married to her. Says the Rambam, if the husband is a Kohen, in any case the woman becomes forbidden to him, nevertheless, he must redeem her and bring her back to her father's home. Even if he's in a different city. Take care of her till you bring her back to her home country. And tragically, the Kohen will have to give the divorce and pay off her ksuba. If the husband is a regular Jew, in which case, a captive woman is permitted to him, he redeems her and brings her back to be his wife as she was. If later on he wants, then of course he has the prerogative to divorce her and pay out her ksuba money. We do not force the husband to redeem his wife for more than her worth on the market. We take into account her regular worth like any other captive hostage. If the price that they're asking for was more than he would give had he divorced her and paid the ksuba, the Amar, and the husband says, also in a cruel move, let me divorce her, here's her ksuba money, let her take care of herself. Here we don't listen to him. So we force him, and he must redeem her. Even if the money they're asking for is 10 times the amount that he committed in the ksuba, even if it's all he has in his bank. All he has to his name is the money they're asking for ransom, he must redeem her. By the way, it's very practical in terms of today's current events, hostage deal, prisoner swaps. We must take into account the worth. We cannot do disproportionate swaps or exchanges because it encourages, it incentivizes the enemies to do more. So here too, you got to pay the ransom, but even if the ransom is worth more than the ksuba, husband's got to pay it. When does this apply? First time round, if she's only held captive once. But if he redeems her, and then she's taken captive again, now he wants to divorce her, he has the right now to just divorce her, give her the ksuba money, and she takes care of herself. If a woman's wife was taken captive while he was in a different country, he was abroad, Beis Din Yerdin L'Nechasav U'Meichrin B'Hachraza, the court will intervene, like with the food, like with the clothing. If he's away, the court will step in, sell his property with an announcement though. When it came to food and clothing, there's no announcement, they just sell the land. Announcements could technically benefit the husband because you'll get a sale for a better price. And so the court here does do an announcement process. And then, when they get the best price, they sell the land, and they redeem her as the husband would usually have to redeem the wife. Halacha Chav Aleph, an interesting case. If a person made a vow on his wife in such a way which obligates him to divorce her. Over the last few days, we've had such cases. Husband makes a wife vow no more relations. Husband makes a vow no more food, no more clothing. In those cases, we force the husband out of the marriage. So what if the husband made such a vow, which means that there's a pending divorce happening? The nishbeis achar shehidira, then she's taken captive after he makes this vow. It's headed for divorce, but they're still married. Does he have to redeem her? Says the Rambam, Einei chayav livdoisa, no obligation to redeem her. Shemisha shehidira nischayav legarshav litin laksuba. The moment he made the vow, he's obligated to divorce her and give her a ksuba. They're considered divorced. The whole idea of releasing a captive is to bring her back to the marriage. Here you can't. The marriage is going nowhere. So there's no obligation to redeem her. Halacha chav beis ha'isha shahaisa asura al ba'ala mitzmei lavin. What if the woman, to begin with, shouldn't have been married to this man? She was one of the Isurei Lavin, a relationship forbidden on penalty of a negative prohibition. Classic example, a Jewish man married a mamzeret, a woman who was born illegitimately. They shouldn't have been married in the first place. But they were married, v'nishbeis, and she was taken captive. Einei chayav lifdoisa, the husband isn't obligated to redeem her. Elonesim laksubasa v'hitif de'as atzma. Give her the ksuba and let her redeem herself. Because again, you're bringing her back to a marriage which cannot stay. The Rambam asks the obvious question, a captive woman is forbidden to a Kohen, and he had to redeem her. So how come in this case of a forbidden marriage, the husband doesn't have to redeem her? Says the Rambam the logical difference. The Kohen's wife wasn't prohibited to begin with. They were married originally. They were allowed to be married. Only now that she's taken captive, it's the prohibition of captivity that causes the marriage to dissolve. In that case, the Kohen has to redeem her. In the case of the mamzeret, though, they shouldn't have married in the first place. The marriage never was a really good marriage to begin with. And so, we don't tell the husband to bring his wife back into such a marriage. And the final section of laws deals with the obligation of burial. It says that if a man's wife dies, he is obligated to bury her. And to provide a eulogy and chanters, these people who would lead eulogizers, like the custom of the country. Even the poorest of Jews should get no less than 2 flutes and a woman who would chant the mournful songs. Of course, if he was rich, everything goes according to his honor, according to his standing. If her honor, if her social standing was higher than that of her husband's, we bury her with a ceremony that befits her social standing. Because a woman only goes upwards with her husband. She never goes downwards, even after death. If the woman is more honorable than the husband must always provide for his wife on her level. If a man does not want to bury his wife, and somebody stands up, a good guy, from his own volition, and pays for the burial, even though when it comes to food, we don't take action against the husband. You stood up, you took care of her, good for you. When it comes to burial, we do, by force, expropriate property from the husband and give it back to the guy who paid for the burial, to make sure this woman isn't thrown to the dogs. Food is different. Burial, you cannot let her wait like that. If the husband was in a different country, different locale, when his wife dies, like with food, like with clothing, like we just had with the captivity, Beis Din Yerdin L'Nechasav, the court will go down to his property, U'Moichrin B'loi Hachraza. They're going to sell, like with the case of food, without announcement. Right away, get the fastest sale going, the Koivre Noisa Lefi Mamin Habal, bury her according to the financial means of the husband, or Lefi Kvaida, and according to his honorability, or her, according to whoever's social standing is higher.